Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patti LuPone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Theater Podcast, intimate personal conversations with the industry's biggest names. Our guest is Brad Oscar, who is currently starring as Frank Hillard in Mrs. Doubtfire, the musical, which just went on hiatus, is scheduled to resume on March 15th, 2022. So everybody get your tickets for that now to prepare for it coming back. Brad has had an amazing career, including working with some of our generation's greats. He shares an amazing story, actually, of when Stephen Sondheim came to see him while he was performing at the Barrow Street Theatre production of the immersive Sweeney Todd that happened a few years ago. Stephen sat at his table and someone went up on their lyrics. Stephen was fortunately there to help out. Can't wait to share this with you, among many other things. In case you didn't hear, we are getting back into creating transcriptions for the episodes, and unfortunately, human-generated transcriptions are not free. So, show your support if you can by visiting ttp.fm/Patreon, Patreon, and help cover those costs in any way you can. Even $1 will go a long way. Find me online on Instagram and Twitter at theater_podcast, at Facebook/official theater podcast. Leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening now. And now, everybody, please enjoy this episode with the wonderful Brad Oscar.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Our guest today has earned 2 Tony Award nominations for his performances in The Producers and Something Rotten. Additional Broadway credits include Damn Yankees in 2005, Spamalot and The Addams Family, and of course, Big Fish. You've seen him on the telly in The Good Wife, Submissions Only, Madam Secretary, of course, Smash. And he can currently be seen as Frank Hillard in Mrs. Doubtfire, the musical. Brad Oscar, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
How are you doing on this glorious morning, days before the Doubtfire hiatus kicks in? I just want to immediately address the elephant in the room.
Yeah, oh please. We're living in a brand new world. It's crazy. Well, every day. I mean, we've been, needless to say, after our slight false sense of complacency and, maybe we got through this and maybe we can continue and get back to doing the things we wanted to do. Sadly, obviously, the virus has reared its ugly head, even uglier head again. And it has totally, needless to say, as we know over these last 4 weeks, had a huge effect on live theater and certainly specifically Broadway. And what that means, because as financially, which is basically how any industry runs. But, so
this is show business. It's not show fun.
Exactly. No, it is. It's dollars and cents. It's bodies in the seats. It's, every show, I try to explain to people because I know it's a difficult thing to understand how shows work. I get it. If you're not in the middle of it all, it's a very complicated, there are so many facets. There are so many unions involved that come together. So, but basically what I always tell everyone is, look, each show is its own little company. You open a company called Mrs. Doubtfire. You open a company called the Phantom of the Opera.
Literally, the producers found an LLC.
Correct. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I get paid by As Long as There Is Love LLC, which is the name of the production company for Doubtfire, and our wonderful final song. So anyway, that immediately I hope puts into relief sort of the dollars and cents of it all. Oh, I'm opening a company. Well, my company is either going to succeed or fail based on if I sell my product or I don't. Mm-hmm. And so it's what it comes down to. And of course, for live theater, what we do, that product is sold live to people who come and sit and we all share the experience together. And right now, there is no question that all of us across the board are not only feeling the effect of just literally people who did sadly test positive after obviously being vaccinated, and entire companies go down because there's not enough coverage because this thing went like wildfire. So if you've got half your cast down, you don't have that many people waiting in the wings to cover them, swings and understudies. No company is ready for something like that.
Well, the show itself, right? You guys were you had done a couple previews back in March 2020, right? Before everything shut down the first time, right?
Correct.
So, getting into your emotional state, your mental state, is this kind of like, oh, okay, this old hat again, or were you sort of expecting this to continue? I guess when Broadway came back and you made it past the point where you did the first time, that when the show made it, we opened and everything made it. Yeah. Was that sort of it? Did you sort of sit back and say, okay, we're cruising now? And
well, I mean, that's what you hope, right? You open and then you hope the work is done. You've done all your rehearsals. You've done your, yes, of course. Now we're also having to deal with the reality of the real world. But so that was working out. Audiences are masked. We were tested regularly we were tested 3 times a week. Now, of course, we've upped that in the last couple of weeks because of what's going on. So we were all able to trust audience, crew, everyone in that building. Nobody gets into the Sondheim front of house backstage anywhere without being part of the testing protocol system. So yes, for a couple months, it seemed like, okay, we can do this. Audiences are masked. We're safe. Those of us who aren't masked as far as actors and, but our crew is still masked backstage, wardrobe, all those people, everyone stays masked, especially now again. So anyway, it seemed to be working. We were able to get back to, what we were doing and make a go of it. And audiences were there and present. We had great houses. We were ready. We were ready to settle in for a run. We were doing just fine. But because of what has happened and because of the fact that Broadway smartly said across the board, I believe, when tickets went back on sale in late summer, Broadway said, you can buy these tickets. Oh, listen, Doubtfire. You could buy tickets, and through the end of February, those tickets would be refundable because things were so unknown and people were like, well, I want to go, but will I travel? Will I be able to? Sadly, what has happened, and of course, not sadly for those people, because I understand I've had plenty of friends and family who did not come to the city in the last couple of weeks because of what's going on. And so their tickets to the show were canceled and refunded, which is not the norm for Broadway. Let's face it, you buy your tickets, those are your tickets. There's no refunds. Sometimes you can switch depending and blah, blah, blah. But in general, no, that's done. That's just how it's been. That's the way of the world. But because we allowed, and rightfully so, again, that to happen, what has happened for us, and believe me, plenty of other shows, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. And by interesting, I mean really scary and hopefully not, a horrible situation. But for us, certainly, a lot of our groups, families, those sales, those dried up or were refunded, as it may be. January and February are notoriously hard. I've never been in a show other than maybe a huge hit show in its first or second year where you're not worried about getting through January and February. Always.
Yeah, this time of the year for the whole business is
30 years of show
is down.
I've never exactly. So you always hope to get through January, February on whatever advance you have and day of sales and blah, blah, blah. So now we take January, February, and now we compound it with the fact that literally, sadly, right now we are considered, a real hot spot, an epicenter, blah, blah, blah. Even houses during Christmas week across the board, I know we're far below what they normally are. So, Doubtfire would close next week or in 2 weeks because you just can't keep the business open when, obviously people aren't buying tickets. It's out there in the press what our show costs to run every week. Kevin McCullum, our extraordinary lead producer, who has done amazing things over the last 2 years to keep us going. And I think a pretty brilliant thing right now that I hope and pray and really believe is going to work and ensure that this show will have a nice run on Broadway. Because we were ready to do that, really, despite, mixed reviews. And I know I've been in show business a long time. Then people would be like, oh, yes, hiatus. What a polite way of saying, it's a bomb, we're closing. I promise you, if things work out in ways that are beyond our control as far as the virus and making sure this works, that everybody comes back and blah, blah, blah. But I believe this show can have a run. And I know how audiences are responding to the show 8 times a week as well. And, and that's true and real and genuine. And so we're hoping for the best. But unquestionably, I have never been on a roller coaster like this with any show I've ever been involved with, but also just never at any point in being, involved in this business has there been a time of more uncertainty and craziness, and then the jumping through hoops and the living in these two worlds at once as far as the protocols and what we're doing, just to try to keep this thing going.
It's interesting to me, sort of the dichotomy of what's going on in the world right now, because theater is about healing and about bringing us together, which is what we need desperately right now. But by coming together, we're spreading the very thing that keeps us, that's keeping us apart.
Exactly.
So it's so frustrating right now. And I want to go back and acknowledge that Doubtfire is not a bomb. I love the show. And love the show. And I love that your role of Frank Hillard was expanded so much from the movie. Yeah. And you guys have so much to do. I've talked about this before, that one of my favorite scenes from the show is the flamenco number near the end. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's costume on, costume off, like doing quick changes on in front of the audience, behind the set, to specific choreographed numbers to have prosthetic Doubtfire pieces go in different places on the different, and you're part of all of this. And it's so much fun to watch you do this. It's so much fun to watch you interact, especially with Rob McClure, who I believe you overlapped on Something Rotten, right?
We did, the second year of Rotten together, correct. Yes.
Right. So working with Rob again, working with the cast, I mean, the children are incredible. Annalise is one of my new favorite up-and-coming stars.
Right.
They're all just so amazing. And of course, Jen Gambittis, as everybody knows. So the whole show in general is great. But when you first, I guess, how did you first hear about it? When you first heard about it, were you called in for an audition? Were you told that it was happening? And then, like, was your reaction like, "Oh, we don't need a Doubtfire musical," or "We absolutely have to have a Doubtfire musical"?
Let's face it. Oftentimes we hear such and such is becoming a musical, and these days it just seems like a given. Like, of course, they're going to try to hit any property that, could be musicalized. And indeed, this is one. There's no question. I mean, this story is, let's face it. It's an exaggerate. It's a larger than life story. It's not, it's not necessarily something that would actually play out in real life. Let's face it, the logistics of what happens. But that's all fine. I mean, that's part of the fantasy. That's part of, what makes musicals, I think, so, exciting in that way, is that we are living in obviously a heightened reality. And in this case, characters and story that lend themselves to that. So no, I wasn't like, I was like, gee, I hope it'll be good. You want it to be good. You want it to do justice to the material. These great movies that come along, and it's hard to transfer a piece from, as we know, film to stage. You're either going to be too faithful, or you're going to try to do something different and then futz with the original intent and or organic nature of what that piece was. Mm-hmm. I feel like we've managed to pretty much stay, color within the lines, but recolor, if you give this new colors, if you will, whatever. But anyway, ironically, Kevin McCullum had this property, had optioned the property, if you will, years ago. So literally days after Something Rotten opened in 2015, he asked if I would come and sit around a table with some, really great, funny people at the time. I know Rob was there. So Rob McClure had been involved. It was Kelly O'Hara and me and Brooks Ashmanskis. Because we had just opened in Doubtfire. I mean, in Something Rotten, because we were exhausted. It was a Monday, and it was soon after we opened. So, you're still exhausted from the whole process of opening, right? And I remember thinking, "Oy, believe me, I would not be here on a Monday. Was this not, a pretty cool project to be sitting in a room just for the first day of literally just a table read."
Right.
Anyway, that was a table read of an entirely different treatment of Mrs. Doubtfire, an entirely different team creatively, as far as author, book, and lyrics, music, book, and lyrics. Sorry.
So I want to stop a second, and I'll let you pick up again. But I just Googled when Robin Williams died. So he died August 11th, 2014, and then you're doing the table read in 2015. You said?
Correct.
Right. Okay. So continue with your story.
Yes.
But I also want to know if there's any point, because this is literally a year after his death, his suicide, where.
I don't.
I guess I don't
remember it being an issue. I mean, again, it is what it is, right? Yes, it's a wonder. It's iconic. He's amazing. It'll be there forever. It's a tragedy that he's gone. I mean, all of those things exist. All of those things, of course, exist. But he brought this character to life, and he made this character an indelible, just as other actors and or characters have become. I remember doing the Addams Family and going in and playing Uncle Fester and thinking, okay, I'm filling a shell of a character that has been created for me, interpreted in various different ways over the years, of course. But whatever that means, that you're, so yes, Robin Williams gave us Mrs. Doubtfire. He gave us this character.
The blueprint.
Exactly. And I think because she is just that, it enables another actor of great skill and enormous, everything. I can't say enough about Rob McClure, as a talent and as a person, but as a talent to be able to do what he does vocally and physically. So yeah, to give another actor the template and the opportunity to fill those shoes, to bring that character back to life, to expand that character, and here's a character who really exists primarily as Daniel Hillard, and then this man who wants to be with his kid so much that he disguises himself as a Scottish nanny to do so. And then we see this woman that we all respond to as well, which is wonderful because the audience meets you halfway.
Right. I'm sorry. I interrupted. I'm
Rob
sorry.
is doing that justice, I think, in a way. And I also think within the first 20 minutes of the show, Rob McClure earns enough of your whatever, love, empathy, sympathy, or just interest to then really go along for the ride. And it's Rob under there playing Dan.
Right. Yeah, it's you're going in expecting to see. Personally, I was like, I want to go in like, who can live up to this character that I have in my mind, this nostalgia from this movie that I watched as a child. And you're right. Within the first 20 minutes, I'm like, all right, cool, that's gone. Until you just said it, I didn't realize that it had happened. But you're right. Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm with Rob now. Rob is
right because he walks in that door. When he walks in that door and the reveal, you now know, okay, that's that Daniel Hillard, as played by Rob McClure, this guy in this situation. We see what he's just done. He came to his brother and his husband to try to, to create this whole disguise. And here's the disguise. And then, it's Mrs. Doubtfire. A character that we know, not a character that they know. The wife and the kids are meeting this character for the first time. Yeah. But again, what a sort of joy in many ways to the audience meets you halfway in that way. Cool. And then, of course, you have the ball and you got to run with it. Yeah. And believe me, this man runs with it. Yeah.
So back to your table read story.
Table read, then nothing, because I guess in general, powers that be were just like, okay, this might not work. We need to go back and rethink this. Flash forward to 4 years later when I simply hear about a reading that's going to be done. So I am not at the table any longer. I don't know, again, things, who knows how things are put back together and what was going on, what I was doing, I don't know. But anyway, they did a week or two in the spring of 19. Yeah. That I was not involved with, but I hear, went relatively well. And then, as far as I know, I think it's as simple as the actor who was playing the role in the reading decided not to move forward with the project. And I went in and auditioned. I went in and auditioned for Jerry Zaks, who I'd worked with briefly on Addams Family when I went into the show a year later, though. So you only really get to work with the actual director maybe 2 or 3 times for a couple hours in a room. He comes and checks on everything before you go in. But I'd never had the process with Jerry, which has been easily one of the highlights of this experience. Working with Jerry Zaks for the first time like that in a room has been just everything, just gold. Just, you talk about you never stop learning and old dogs, new tricks and all that stuff. Boy, I can't say enough about that. So, but yeah, I went in and auditioned and, and I had the connection to the creative team, the boys, Wayne and Carrie Kirkpatrick and John O'Farrell, who had written Something Rotten. Mm-hmm. So that felt good as far as going into a room. It always is nice to go into a room that feels a little warmer or a little safer based on, any previous And again, because I worked with Jerry briefly, and I've auditioned for Jerry several times, and it's always a wonderful process because Jerry, 9 times out of 10, always is on his feet and comes up and, let's try, think about this, try that. He gives you an adjustment or two, which I love, because that to me, again, shows, okay, great, let's work. Watch me work with you, because it's a collaboration, right. Always, and it should be. And so I love, because I only have so many answers, I'll come in and give you what I think is the character, is the moment, is the this, as any actor should. Fully commit to, I've learned, make a choice. Because then the director can say, oh, okay, he made a choice, but hey, what if it's this? And then, great, I'm going to make that choice. And so, yeah, I love Jerry. And auditioned and got it.
I love that. And you mentioned several Broadway credits, and I want to touch real quick on the fact that you were at the Sweeney Todd production a couple years ago at Barrow Street Theatre Off-Broadway. This immersive production that was just absolutely incredible. I mean, it sounds like your reaction too. You've got a special place for this production too.
God. Yeah.
Of course, working with Carolee Carmello, a national treasure of the Broadway world.
Yeah.
But what was that like for you in terms of the immersive aspect of this? Have you ever done something like that at this level where you were just interacting with the audience like this?
No, not really. And also, to be honest with you, it is my least favorite kind of theater. I'm all for like the fourth wall. The fourth wall is there for a reason. I'll stay up here, you stay down there, everything's going to be fine. In general, I am not a fan of, as an actor or as an audience member, actors coming into the audience. Stay up there. I'm here to watch you. I'm not here to participate. But that, again, in general, right? So I'll never forget when my agent said they want to see you for this Sweeney, and he showed me the breakdown. I had heard about it already because Sweeney Todd, see, here's another thing. Sweeney Todd, to me, is the be-all, end-all. It is a huge part of my formative years growing up. I was 15 when it opened on Broadway. I saw it 3 times on Broadway. I saw it once a week when it started its tour at the Kennedy Center in D.C. I grew up in D.C. So Sweeney has always been, it's my favorite. It was like nothing I've ever, blah, blah, blah. Productions over the years. Yeah, it is. As it is to many people, I know. But so yes, but it is a show that is very special to me. And so yes, to have the opportunity to maybe be a part of a production. But when my agent said, okay, I want to see you for the Beatle, which I always think, I'm not really a tenor. Can I sing it? But I could. I managed to. But the breakdown, basically was like, an actor should be game and ready to go at, and all this, what it was, this not interactive so much as just including them in the proceedings, if you will, even just whether that meant looking them in the eye, but that's huge. You know what I mean? If you think about it, that's again, breaking the fourth wall.
Right, including them in your reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was a little scared of that, but I was like, well, this is Sweeney Todd. Just deal with it, Brad. And also I try, these expressions that are sometimes helpful as we go along in life to, run toward the fear, when it comes to my work anyway, when it comes to my, as an actor. Run toward the fear. Trust that people are going to be there to help you, hopefully, and trust yourself and take the leap and blah, blah, blah. So, I tried to embrace and not be so scared of what that meant or what I thought it meant even. You know what I mean? So yes. And then, so to be a part of that, I mean, and especially now with, Steve just leaving us. And so to have finally at that point in my career and at that point in his journey where nothing made him happier than to see his pieces reimagined, rediscovered. He was there. We had an impromptu invited dress before the actual invited dress we were having the next night. And he was there at the impromptu. And he was there at the invited dress. And he was there for the first preview. Then he was there on opening night. Then he was there a couple weeks later, because sadly we only had the 4 of the original English company. We had them for like 6 weeks maybe, or, but anyway, he could not get enough of it. I mean, it's why I came over in the first place, because he saw this production they did in this pie shop, this company that does environmentally, local, location productions. So he saw it and he absolutely loved it. And that's why it ended up, coming over here in the first place. So to have had that experience, to have been in his orbit in that way, to have had him at that first, I'll never forget it, that impromptu invite address. There were several long tables as well as other various. And at the top of Act 2, God, That's Good, all of us who were then functioning as ensemble, because there were only 8 actors. And that was the amazing thing, too. Not only were we playing our roles, but all of us, except for Sweeney and Lovett, were functioning as also ensemble and various other little roles. So at the top of Act 2, God, That's Good, we are all sitting at the head of each of these long 4 tables. And then you have whoever you have at your table, right, while you're doing this number. Well, damn it, don't you know, there's Steve at my table. Now, obviously anyone who has worked on a Sondheim show knows how tricky some of his harmonies can be, God bless. Some that sound deceptively simple and then forget it. And I'm not, I learn by ear. I don't really read music. I'm, wow. And so, it was some of those so yes, to have him there at the table and trying to convince myself that, I knew what I was singing and I would sing the right part, but I was always so scared I was going to, fuck it up. But, those were moments I will never forget. My husband Diego loves the story when it was I think it might've been the next night, or it could have been that night. And the Lovett, God bless her, she'd get so nervous and anxious. She was so wonderful, but it's crazy to see the ways in which we sabotage ourselves. All of us have done the same thing. The minute you start to think of what the next lyric is, you're screwed. You're going to forget it. So she's doing By the Sea, and she drops or misses, and she stumbles, and she's searching, and literally within 2 seconds, the lyric comes from the shop.
From the table.
And it's Steve feeding her the lyric.
Oh my God.
And just in a effortless, wonderful, again, moments like that are just, just crazy and lovely. And it was so sweet. And we, and everyone laughed, she laughed as she picked up the line. And, it was just like, geez, Louise, is this my life? Because, this is just, that's just, it's gold. So I
love that. I've heard so many positive, grateful. But so many amazing stories about Steve Sondheim, especially recently.
That's what's so amazing too, is that exactly, he wasn't a dick, man. He was like, he was a generous soul. He was to write what he wrote, to the output, the complicated nature of everything that he was able to get inside of our heads the way he did, and human nature, and to maintain a humanity literally with people who mostly idolized, treated him like a god, which must be a real pain in the ass after a while if you think about it, right? Nobody like a normal person. Everybody's like, believe me, I had trouble treating him like a normal what do you say to Steve Sondheim? But the more you just, and he insisted on being called Steve. God, if you called him Mr. Sondheim, especially in any working situation, not just meeting him on the street, but, being in that situation, oh, Mr. Sondheim, oh, Steve, and he meant it. He just wanted to be, part of the team, but geez Louise.
We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. I've been doing this podcast now for over 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
And everybody, some of the biggest names that I've interviewed, we stop recording, and the first thing they say to me was, God, was that okay? Was that all right? Like some of the biggest names that again, me, present company included, of course.
Right.
That I'm saying, I'm talking to them and I'm so excited and I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for giving your time, for giving this hour, whatever it is. And then the first thing they say is, was I happy? And it's it gives me a great perspective and just shows me that, even like you said, that people, when you start thinking about lyrics ahead of time, that even the great people, like it before they go out on stage at Carnegie Hall or before they go on stage at the Kennedy Center or whatever that is, everyone's on Tony Award performances, everyone's getting nervous. Everyone's got a little bit of that something that makes them have to pee 5 times before the curtain goes up.
Exactly. I mean, exactly. We all have our own stuff. It's so easy to project, or you think, what other people are thinking or feeling or how they're behaving, or, oh, wow, it seems so effortless. It seems so easy. It seems so this. It seems so that. Yeah. Rob McClure, I watch Rob, the way Rob works, and I learn. I'm so envious in so many ways that I feel like he's, and I'm talking about, like, again, the psychological aspect of what we do, the pressure to go out there 8 times a week and do a role like Rob is doing. When I was playing Max Bialystock for years, I got to play Max. And the enormous pressure of doing a role like that 8 times a week, physically, vocally, mentally, keeping yourself, ready to, ride that wave, if you will, because again, the material, when you have material, of course, that supports you, and it makes your job that much easier. And so, doing the producers was always joyous and thrilling and just the best role I could ask for. Doesn't mean I wasn't exhausted. Doesn't mean I was like, oh my God, get me to the finish line. But, I never got bored. I never got, God knows. But anyway, now I'm talking in circles and I forgot what my point was, what we were talking about.
Learning from Rob McClure.
Right. Exactly. And just wanting to, giving yourself, I guess, the opportunity to do the best that you can do, to be the best that you can be, and not letting those insecurities, and not letting, because we always, we want to please, right? We want to be liked. We want to be loved. We want to win awards. We want to do all these, all these things that are outside of, right, and actually have nothing to do with the work. You know what I mean? It may happen. Ideally, people will respond in a good way, but really, that has nothing to do with the process. It has nothing to do with, what you're going out there to do in that way. So, anyway, the ways that one sets oneself up for success and the ways one sabotages oneself, right, are fascinating. No matter how old you are, I think, I sometimes think it gets harder. I sometimes think to myself, Jesus, Brad, really? Still? After all this time, and you're standing here and you're, a little more anxious and nervous than I think you need to be or should be. Are you really going over those lines again? You know those lines. It's live. Anything can happen. And I've been out there when anything does. And so that's part of the joy, I guess. But it's also part of what makes it so, I often sometimes joke the love-hate relationship, because it is always, and then, there is always that it's live, anything can happen. And there is, and again, right now, living right now, dealing with, we're testing every day. Believe me, there's obviously an underlying anxiety. Oh my God, am I going to test positive today? That now. So add on to what we're doing, dealing with obviously different faces on stage with swings and understudies, who, needless to say, as we've obviously now the last couple of weeks, there's been such an outcry based on a poorly timed and misinformed comment. But, there's no people like show people. And I'm telling you, what is happening across Broadway right now is so indicative of why this is the top of the shop, and why when you come to see a Broadway show, I promise you, you are seeing, yes, a group of people come together on stage and off stage. Let us not forget there's more people off stage, crew and wardrobe and front of house, ushers and ticket takers, and just everybody, maintenance, people who keep these buildings clean for us, especially right now when it comes to the filtration or whatever. So anyway, I'm just saying, but it is top of the shop. These are the best of the best. I truly believe that, because that's, there's a standard. There's a standard that is, maintained, and we're all responsible for that. And
Absolutely. And I want to go back to young Brad. You said you grew up in DC, but you were born in DC too, right?
Yes.
I was actually looking up you, of course, to prep for this interview. And I thought to myself, you know what? I don't know what that name comes from. Do you know why it's named Washington, D.C.? This is an off-topic history lesson, but I looked it up last night.
You know what? The District of Columbia. I don't.
Because you know about like the decision through the story of Hamilton, the musical. You know why it was placed in this area between Virginia and Maryland.
Right.
And Virginia gave some land, Maryland gave some land, and when they were deciding what to name it, of course, they decided we're going to do the Washington part because of President Washington, our first George Washington. And then DC was it originally was Territory of Columbus. And they changed it to District of Columbia as an homage to Christopher Columbus, the discoverer of the country. I put in air quotes, right?
Sure. So they say, right?
Yeah. So anyway, off topic. There you go. There's your history lesson for today. So, young Brad in Washington D.C. What got you into theater? What got you into performing? Why did you start gravitating toward the stage?
I was introduced to it through my folks, basically, because they were theater goers. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was president of the Variety Club at one point, which was sort of a entertainment kind of club. I'm not exactly sure. You can sort of read about it. It's legendary, and I believe still exists. But anyway, so they, growing up in DC, were able to go to the theater, obviously, because there was plenty of stuff in DC, and shows would try out. So I was introduced to it in that way. And they did some community theater also when they were younger. So yeah, sort of came by it honestly as far as, hearing cast albums and falling in love with that sound, late 60s. And then my folks taking me to the theater again at the age of like 7, 8-ish, and growing up at a time when the big Broadway stars would still take out their hit shows sometimes 20 years after they had done them on Broadway, but there was this summer circuit. Most of these theaters were in the round. The one near me growing up in DC was Shady Grove Music Fair in Gaithersburg-ish, Maryland. Up here, there was Westbury Music Fair, Valley Forge. I know there were several on the circuit. Anyway, I get to see, and this is like the summer of 72-ish, give or take, I get to see Gwen Verdon and Ray Walston do Damn Yankees.
Wow.
I get to see Angela Lansbury do Mame.
Wow.
So, right there at an early age, man, boom. And those two shows, of course, happen to be touchstones for me as well. Because I always say, those of us who fell in love with musicals, there's always one or two or three that really got you going. And I don't judge people's choices. And I've got to learn to temper as I get older. And someone says, "Oh my God," God forbid someone says, "Mamma Mia," I'm just going to jump out a window. But nonetheless, for me, Damn Yankees and Mame and Damn Yankees, which you mentioned earlier. Which, by the way, I think you might have mentioned that it was one of my Broadway credits. Damn Yankees actually was the first time I got to go home and work professionally in DC at Arena Stadium, which is where I met my husband. So needless to say, the show that was very special to me since 1972 became even more so when I get to go work at home for the first time professionally at Arena, where I grew up seeing tons of theater. And I meet my husband, Diego Prieto, who was an actor as well down in DC at the time, working at Arena and Signature. And and the rest is history. But so anyway, so I'm turned on to it in that way, and very nurtured and encouraged by my folks as far as doing, well, I mostly would put on shows in the basement and stuff like that, but then I started doing stuff outside of school, because there was only so much theater in the schools that I went to as far as my public education. But the Jewish Community Center in Rockville, Maryland had an amazing theater department for kids. I think back on it now, and it was like Juilliard Jr. And I say that because literally we do a summer musical. Every summer there was a program, we do a musical. And there was a bunch of kids, and I did Fiddler and Dolly and Oliver and, got to play my first lead roles and stuff like that. But then during the school year, there would be classes on voice and movement and, stuff that I would then pay thousands of dollars to learn at Boston University or relearn, because here I was at a relatively early age, learning breathing exercises and a lot of stuff that laid an extraordinary groundwork for me, and taking some voice lessons as well, starting to sing. So I was really fortunate in those early, mentors and people that I studied with before I even went off to actually officially, study and go to college, which as I said, I went to BU. So yeah, but again, all a very natural progression. And then when I was about 12-ish, give or take, we started coming up to New York City for the weekend and seeing 4 shows in a weekend, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And then this became, Fantasyland. New York City was it. Broadway was, because again, it was, my God, all of these theaters packed into this, dense 10-block area, the lights, the excitement that, it was, and then of course seeing, again, seminal shows that blew my mind and taught me in so many ways what theater could be. Yes, albeit big commercial theater, but still, I'm talking about On the 20th Century and Sweeney Todd and the original production of Nine, and just things that I'd never seen before. I'd never seen stories told that way. I'd never seen, and again, because it's the top of the shop. So the designs, those costumes in that original production of Nine, William Ivy Long's costumes. Of course. I mean, come on. So, but those things that affect you in a way. And so yeah. And it's what I always wanted to, again, I wanted to do this since I was relatively young, and then to be able to, see theater, see Broadway shows, obviously live close enough, and fortunately have folks that, certainly was much more affordable at the time. We weren't very wealthy, believe me. My grandfather came to live with us when I was around, also around like 11 or 12. And God bless him, an amazing man, the one who was with the Variety Club and had showbiz in his blood. Grew up here, born in Brooklyn, went to see everything on 42nd Street, before the Great Depression. And so saw, Ziegfeld Follies and all that stuff. So I come by it honestly there too. Wow. But anyway, nothing made him happier. I swear to God, his Social Security checks would come in and they would go right towards our trips to New York, because nothing made him happier than for us to come up to the city as a family, the 4 of us, and, see shows. And so anyway, I was, very, very lucky that way to be able to indulge my love of it and again, get an education, because I always say half of my education, half of anyone's, I think, theatrical education as a performer, as an artist, is to see as well as do. But see, be critical. What turns you on? What doesn't work for you? Why? Mm-hmm. All those things. I just find that that's always still a part of my education.
Interesting. So, okay. I want to go one level deeper though, because people, we talk about this a lot, the touchstones and what got people into theater. Like you saw something and it sparked this curiosity, but what is it? Like if you go back, if you go to the motivation, if you go to, let's get acting class level deep here. What is it about the need to be on stage? Is it a need? Is it a pulling, a calling? Is it because it sounds, there's a lot of people that I've performed with in the past that like they didn't get the emotional response from parents, right? If you want to get psychological about this, they didn't get a love from a parent, so they get the love from the applause, and that's their substitution.
Right. Certainly not that. I don't know. Dare I say, I don't care. And I mean that. It's not, I can analyze myself. God knows I've been in enough therapy, thank God. But what sparked that kid in the basement dancing around to the album of Seesaw? I don't know where that connective tissue came from. I don't know why. I know, again, influences I get. One hears things, one processes things. And as a child, I'm sure, obviously, needless to say, I don't remember 90% of what that was that affected, right? I just, as far as that goes, what we remember, actually what we don't. But I just know that there was something about the idea. I mean, sure, the attention as far as being able to be the conduit, if you will, be the vessel through which you're going to hear this, or I'm going to tell you this story, or whatever it was. Because if you're putting on an album and lip syncing in the basement, which is really what I was doing a lot of, seriously, what's going on? Well, I want to do I want to be that, right? I want that voice to come out of my mouth. I want to tell this story. I want to play that role. It's why I've always wanted to play Mame. I mean, I still can't get over that. Come on, no matter how much. But I mean, so whatever that basic instinct is, I guess, is part of it, because that's what thrilled me in that way, And so when I'm on stage, I mean, there's no fuller Brad, I think, than when I was on stage, like doing Betrayed or doing It's a Musical with Brian Darcy James and a ridiculous cast of extraordinary Broadway veterans, an ensemble that just, oh my God, I mean, what? So, so to me, that's the highest of highs. That's when I feel like, I am full. I'm because I'm in a very happy place, but I'm also hopefully giving you, the audience, everything that I am so passionate about, or whatever, again, within the outline of the thing. Look, the last year and a half was horrible, because it was very hard to sit here many times and think, wait a minute, am I totally defined by what I do? Is my worth totally defined by the performance I'm giving, the show I'm in, the people I'm surrounded by, is that the only way I live? You know what I mean? In quotes, like when I'm working, because we weren't, because that part of my soul was not being fed at all. And I've been very lucky to have kept it fed, except for, well, I've had my downtime. I've had good 6 months. I've had, bad years, if you will, relatively speaking, but that's showbiz, but here we were at a time, and to have it taken away from us the way it was. But yeah, I questioned, wow, again, is my self-worth tied to too much what I do? Because that's not all of who I am. But you know what? It's a lot of who I am, and it's okay. And my ego, and when we say ego, the pure sense of that word, not my ego being, look at me, how fabulous I am. My ego being my sense of self, and the self that I bring to what I do, right? The self that then gets activated, if you will, is, yeah, that's what does it. And so I do, yeah, I miss it terribly. And it's part of my, it's just part of my, makeup that way.
Well, so how did you cope? What was it, a need to cope, or was it an acceptance? Like when during your 6 months off, or the 6-month downtime, or the 2 years when COVID shut down Broadway, or year and a half, the years when you said you had bad years,
right?
Do you kind of, like, emotionally, mentally, how do you get through that?
Well, I mean, I guess there are two different things. Being unemployed, and then, of course, the COVID thing are two slightly different things. Because when I'm unemployed, I trust that, you know what, so far, so good. This has been working out okay. I'm going to just trust that something's going to come along. I'm going to work again, okay? So it sucks. And sometimes I'm like, oh, geez, great. Here I am, 50-something, and I have no job. And, it feels weird that way. But look, it's what I signed up for. And so between my husband, God bless, who of course is a grounding force in my life in every way. And so especially in times like that, yes, when I'm feeling not so great about myself, or just like, when am I, what's going on? That's grounding. And financially, again, it's not something we need to, thank God, old enough, smart enough, have some savings. Diego's working, that is not an issue, which can be an issue for a lot of performers. Mm-hmm. So I feel very blessed when it comes to that. But yeah, the COVID break was a little tougher. Again, lucky to know though that Doubtfire was coming back. We knew it was coming back. It was just a question of when. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, when it turned into, well, this is going to be well over a year. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. And I just, I soldiered through. I did a couple little things here and there as far as readings or online Zoom stuff, which, runs its course very quickly because what we do is live. It's in the same room. It's interactive.
Energy.
Exactly. You can't. So, so it was, it was what it was. It wasn't fun. And I hope that that it never has to happen like that again. I know I'm going into about 9 weeks, maybe just 8, if we start rehearsal again and things happen like they're going to, God willing. This will be, again, easier because I know there's going to be a light at the end of this tunnel. I'm very, very confident that we are set up for success to come back and actually give this show a run. So I feel good about that as far as that goes. And so over the next couple of weeks, I'll eat too much and cook some more and, and try to do some things that you can't do when you're working, whether that means go away for the weekend or have dinner with friends. Again, based on the environment we're living in, I'm still going to be uber safe. I'm still taking, really good care as far as being safe that way because I have a responsibility to, the show and my, my family and everybody as far as that goes. And, but yeah, just rolling along.
I think that is a wonderful place to wrap up the episode. Of course, Doubtfire is going on hiatus January 10th, March 14th. Performance is currently scheduled to resume March 15th, 2022.
We're on sale, baby. Yes.
Yep. So buy your tickets. And I want to end with the three standard closing questions I ask everybody. So the first one, just very simply, is what motivates you?
What motivates me? Oh, these big questions.
Very
Didn't even
simple.
get a heads up. What motivates me? Absolute citron. No, what motivates me? I guess my family, my base, my peeps, my husband, my having a base from which to live, if you will. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
It does. It makes me, want to be everything. Want to be a good person, want to be a good performer, want to be a good, all that, because I am blessed to have, a lot of love in my life.
Wonderful. Okay. So the next question then is, what advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
I would say this is easier said than done the younger you are, but keep searching and finding your true self. Keep on top of that. And by that, I mean, be the fullest you that you can be. Don't think you know what other people want or what you can give to other people, or when you're in an audition situation, again, all these, what is it? Because he wants something different than what she wants, than what they want, than blah, blah, blah. So my point is that I have learned and wish I had learned earlier, I guess, or just had told myself earlier, again, be the fullest you, bring yourself to the table, your choices, your ideas, your way of telling the story, whatever that is, that's you, because you won't always know what they want. You'll be given some direction, a breakdown, whatever, but make choices. Be bold in that way, because that alone is a positive. Mm-hmm. Despite if your choice is right or wrong or not what they want or whatever that might be, you're going to show them something. And as I said before earlier, talking about like going in for a director like Jerry, most directors, if they see something that's committed and strong or whatever, then they're going to know, we've got something here. Now I wonder if this might work, and they'll give you the adjustment or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But anyway, just to really, find and be your truest self. Don't apologize for it. Don't question it. Don't compare yourself to someone else. God, it's so hard. It's so hard what we do in that way because it's so subjective. It's entirely subjective. So let go of as much of that as you can and be you.
Okay, last question then. You could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want. What would you say?
Right. Well, I mean, I think after all this, I would still say Sweeney Todd, I guess.
I expected
because,
that.
The original production of Sweeney Todd, sure.
Cool,
because,
cool.
In many ways, yeah. But I also have 6 more I could, easily list off. So, but
it's funny. Sweeney is the most given answer to that question.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah. So where can we find you online?
Love it. I'm not, I'm not a big social media guy, but I am. I think I'm Brad Oscar 64 on Instagram. He says, I think, right? Yes. I'm there. I rarely post, but I certainly see what other people do. And yes, otherwise, you will find me at the Stephen Sondheim Theatre on March 15th.
That's right.
Well, this week as well, currently, but nonetheless.
Yes. So you get more of me at thetheaterpodcast.com. I am on Instagram and Twitter at theater_podcast. Please leave a rating and a review of this podcast wherever you are listening. This has been edited by Well-Rounded Hoodlum Productions. Music by Jukebox the Ghost and conversation by Brad Oscar. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alan. This was great. Thank you.
Make the world a little colorful.